Hi, I'm Bryan Pugh. I'm the Executive Director of the Brain Injury Association of Maryland. So what is TBI? TBI is a traumatic brain injury, and it's one form of an acquired brain injury that results from being struck or hit by something. It's an external force, and it can come in a variety of ways. It can be a motorcycle accident. It can be a fight. The number one cause of brain injury, traumatic brain injury in the United States is falls. And that can come from, getting up in the bathroom and slipping and falling and hitting your head, or just learning how to walk and slipping and falling. So it goes from young to old, and it's one form of what we call acquired brain injury. And acquired can be a stroke, an aneurysm, brain tumor, and then even the operation to remove the brain tumor can create trauma into the brain. And so TBI is one form of an acquired brain injury, and it's the one that gets a lot of mention because it's in the news a lot. It's in the news with football, it's in the news with hockey, so sports bring a lot of notoriety. The number one injury coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, so we've got a lot of talk around wounded warriors. Right now, one of the things that we're talking about and trying to bring awareness to is the realization that opioid overdoses can create brain injuries. And what's an overdose? Well, an overdose is where the brain doesn't get enough oxygen, when you pass out, which also can create another brain injury, because if you pass out and hit the ground and hit your head again, you've got a traumatic brain injury. But in terms of an opioid overdose, you're lacking oxygen going to the brain, that's creating the overdose. And depending on the length of time you're unconscious, and depending on the length of time that you're not getting oxygen to the brain, parts of your brain can die. And so that when you wake up, or you're recovered, or somebody administers Narcan and brings you out of the opioid overdose, you could be waking up with a brain injury, and very likely are waking up with a brain injury. Particularly now we're seeing with fentanyl overdoses, because fentanyl overdoses are so powerful and so extreme, and they last so long. They suppress breathing, and they suppress oxygen to the brain for so long that people are waking up with significant brain injuries. But people aren't necessarily putting that together. So we are incredibly blessed and thankful that we have first responders and family members that are trained in administering, Narcan and naloxone to bring you out of that. But the reality is, as thankful and as grateful as we are that you're still alive, we're not putting together the fact that you may have a brain injury, and we need to think about that as well, because you have a substance abuse disorder that led you to the overdose, but then you now also have a brain injury. And those can really conflict, because if your thinking is impaired, if your ability to resist temptation is impaired, if your ability to make decisions, good health decisions for yourself is impaired, and you have a substance use disorder, that's a recipe for disaster. And so we're really trying to bring awareness about putting those two together, that the family may understand and recognize and have been living with somebody who has a substance abuse disorder, but they've never had anybody who's had a brain injury, and they're being told about one but not necessarily about the other. And you do need to acknowledge both, because they can create significant challenges for somebody who's attempting recovery. The Brain Injury Association of Maryland was founded 40 years ago this year in 1983 by families of people with brain injuries who really didn't have anywhere to turn, so they turned to each other. You can find out more about us at www.biamd.org, or give us a call at 1-800-221-6443.